Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of public trust in government statistics, and particularly statistics to do with alleged job vacancies, employment statistics generally, supposed skill shortages, the amount of migrants coming in through mass migration programs of varying sorts, whether it be refugees and or students becoming citizens, this sort of stuff. So really, no one that I talk to believes in these stats anymore. The committed globalists who want to run with the lies and the propaganda and the deceit and the untruths. They say, oh no, they're reliable, good reliable data. But the reality is quite different. Now I'll just look at I've been collecting stats on these issues for a while, so I've got quite a good bank of stats, and be they accurate or not, the relativity between the stats would still hold true. Certainly by my estimation anyway. So there's the amount of jobs that were listed on Australia's biggest online job employment board. Is now today, so this is pre-COVID, to today it's fallen by 42%. So there are 42% less jobs being advertised on there. Now, on top of that, the amount of repeat adverts have also increased substantially. I can't get an accurate figure on that, but just say looking at a 100 job adverts, how many advert repeats are there within those 100 jobs? So that's an indication rather than a definitive number, but they've gone up by 20% or just over 20%. So what is so the same job is being posted multiple times on the job board. Now, not that didn't happen previously; it's now happening more or more often, certainly based on the samples that I've looked at. So the reality is that the amount of jobs have fallen by, if we do the mathematics on this, there's about half the amount of jobs today as there were before COVID. Now, that's the reality. Yet the government and the various employer groups are saying there's a chronic shortage of workers. Oh, absolutely. The economy can't grow. The whole country is going to go bankrupt, but because there are just so many unfilled jobs. Now, and I've touched on this sort of thing before. Now, if there are unfilled jobs, let's assume that's even an accurate claim, which I don't believe it is, but let's assume it is. If there are unfilled jobs, then they have to be advertised for greater than 30 days. Now, if I set a 30-day limit on the job board and say, well, how many adverts are there in week 1, and are the same job vacancy adverts there in week number 4? Now that's a very small number of jobs. I mean, you'd be looking at less than 5%. Now, again, that's nationally. So it's not simply low wage jobs. There are a bit of a mix, mostly low wage. But if you look at the numbers there, most jobs are being filled, given the time the adverts on. Most jobs are being filled in between the 1 and 3 week period. So they're being filled pretty quickly. And there's very, very few that are lasting for the whole 30 days. Some of those will just be lazy employers that haven't bothered to take the advert down or forgotten or whatever. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's an unfilled job vacancy there. So there's no evidence to support the claim that there are vast numbers of unfilled jobs. Now, there are unfilled jobs around, but it's the lowest paid jobs where employers are refusing to pay any more or offer improved conditions or circumstances. Now, I just want to give you an example. Say someone on unemployment benefits or some sort of government social security payment. Maybe they're claiming to be partially handicapped or something like that, but they're getting a government payment. Now, they can travel around on public transport for the whole day for a couple of bucks. So if they want to attend, 100 interviews or something, or, job application interviews, that sort of thing in a day, they've only got to pay a couple of bucks to travel around for the whole day. Now, the minute they get a job, they then lose that benefit, and that what they could travel for $2 now is costing them $20. $25 to travel. Now, when you're on the lowest entry level job, that sort of payment for transport, because you can't really afford to run a car and that sort of. So the payment for transport is going to eat up a decent portion of your wage. So when you meet all the costs of the travel and buying a lunch or something like that, maybe you've got to buy some better clothes or go to other and additional expenses. You actually end up being better off on the unemployment benefit, even if the transport links are good. Now, if you're in an area where the transport links are quite poor, there's no train station anywhere nearby. The things like the bus service is pretty ordinary, and the place where the factory or the warehouse is a half-hour walk from the nearest bus station. These sorts of things. Then it's a bit of a chore to go to. Not only do you have this expense, but what if it's raining or really is a seriously cold wind or something blowing? You've got to walk for half an hour through that, and by the time you've met the cost of the extra costs of going to work, you're actually better off staying at home. And of course, you get free medical and dental if you're receiving a government benefit, and various other benefits. You can get rent assistance payments and all sorts. You can get additional payments to help you with paying your electricity bill or something like that. So there are various other payments. I don't know what the quantities are, but various other payments that are available. That as soon as you start work, you lose those. So when you go into work at an entry-level job, unless all the ducks line up for these people, unless all the ducks line up, the transport links are good and it's not far away and it's an easy walk from the bus stop or the train station or these sorts of things, unless you get that, it's hardly worth their while working. Now, if they start a job, then they from the week they get the first paycheck, they lose the government benefits. But if they lose the job or whatever, then they have to wait a number of weeks before they get the government benefits again. So it's a high risk venture for them. How do they know they're going to last the job, and how do they know it's going to turn out okay, and so on. So these jobs at the bottom end, the pay has relative to cost of living, the pay has fallen to such an extent that it's not worth doing it. Now, if people live at home and their folks are doing okay, they don't have to pay any rent or board or something. They can borrow the folks' car. Folks will pay for the petrol and that sort of thing. Then it's doable. But then your family needs a certain amount of wealth before you could do that. If your family's that well off, you probably wouldn't be applying for jobs that are in that entry level area. So really the issue is entry level jobs in remote areas or areas with poor transport links. That's pretty much where all the problems are confined to. Outside of that, there isn't really an issue. Now, these could all be addressed by better pay and conditions and these sorts of things. And this is what's not happening, and this is why. But this is not a labour shortage. It's not a skills shortage. It's a lack of imagination, a lack of response to market conditions by employers. Now, I just want to have a look at a couple of other statistics here, which are interesting. In the again, we're being told we have to have mass migration because there's this incredible skills shortage. Now, certainly wherever I've checked and had a look, where it is a skilled job paying above the average wage, the employers are getting plenty of applicants. There was I mentioned this recently, and there have been others along similar lines. Say a technician where they've put out an advert and they're getting 25 plus applications, from all of whom are well qualified and properly credentialed and so on. Now these are paying maybe I don't know, sort of 1.5 times the average wage, something like that, but and better even. So there was a recent just a project we were working on where the CEO was saying they ran an advert for like a sort of a sales director type role, reasonably technical, and they got over 100 applications for that. Many, so he claimed, so the CEO claimed, were quite well credentialed. So there's no shortage of skilled labour, far from it. Nor is there a shortage of cheap labour. There's again simply a shortage of imagination by employers who are in difficult locations for entry-level jobs. This is sort of relating to cost of living here. The amount of someone's income that is taken up by rent. Now, I'm not talking communal living here, but I'm talking, say, one person per bedroom. So if you've got a 2-bedroom apartment, you'd have 2 people living here, 3-bedroom, 3 people, and so on. So, but and equally with a one-person bedroom, one person apartment, or 1-bedroom apartment rather, one person living there. Now that's not always going to be the case. A lot of people do live on their own now, but equally it could be a couple. But just assuming a single income at the moment. Now this is for 50% or less of your net take-home cash in hand income. So this is your cash in hand income after you've paid tax, after you've paid Social Security, after you've paid, whatever else. It's the cash in your hand at the end of the week that you get in your job. So this is the amount of jobs in Australia that pay enough money where you can pay only 50% of your paycheck in rent, or less than 50%. Okay. Now, how many jobs do you reckon would in Australia would do? Only 22%, 21.85% to be precise. 22% of jobs pay enough money where 50. This assumes, by the way, a city. You're living in a city, but pay enough money to only have to pay 50% of your income in rent. Now, the idea is you're supposed to be under strain if you pay more than 1/3 of your income in rent, that you're already under financial strain. Now, just consider this: only 22% of jobs pay enough money for people to pay to be able to pay 50% or less in rent. Now, this assumes the average rent, by the way. So if you're looking at, say, in the inner city areas, where a 1-bedroom apartment, and these are, of course, you've got access to much better transport links and so on in the inner city, much better access to facilities and all sorts of things like restaurants and going to shows or whatever. But so this assumes the rent in the inner city now, and the average, by the way. So this is only 22% of jobs. Now that, just to sort of get, that means 78% of the jobs advertised in Australia, you'll be paying, assuming you're on your own, you'd be paying greater than 50% of your income in fucking rent. That's how insane that the cost of living is in Australia now relative to incomes and the purchasing power of those incomes. So this is, I didn't believe, I had to do the numbers again on this because I fucked up the mathematics here, but no, it was right, and it took me a bit by surprise. Now, something that I bang on about fairly often is how the number of the best paid jobs in Australia, so we're talking the best paid jobs, how much the private sector presence in those best paid jobs, how much the private sector presence is shrinking. So 20 years ago, nearly every job in the top paid jobs was a private sector job. And today, there is, like, out of the top 50 best paid jobs in Australia, top 50, one was in the fucking private sector. One was in the private sector. Now, there are others that you could say, well, that's a private company or it's traded on the share market or something. But no. Firstly, the biggest category of well-paid jobs is NGOs, almost equal with government jobs being the best paid. And the next category was supposedly private companies that are completely 100% reliant on government contracts. So they're not fucking private companies anymore. It's this private, public partnership type crap where these companies are being given money, taxpayer money, specifically so they can bring in, shitloads of brown and black people to Australia. That's the only role they've got. Whether or not they even service the contract like that, there's no competitive bidding or anything. So these people are being paid, top dollar plus of taxpayers' money in what, in my view, is a crony economy situation, and they're just delivering on the globalist project. That's all it is. So I just let that sink in, because it drives me crazy. The 50 best paid jobs in Australia, and fucking one of them, only one, is in the private sector. And you look at the sort of money that's being paid. Diversity and inclusion officers being paid 2, 3, 4, 5 times what an engineer is being paid. This sort of thing, it's madness, and involves, it shows that in 20 years the economic structure of the West, in this case Australia, the economic structure has almost changed completely. It's almost a complete reversal from what a market capitalist economy should be. So there's my thoughts on that. But the idea that we have to have mass migration because of this skills shortage, none of these stats are real or accurate that we're told. And once you sit down and take the time, which doesn't really take that long, to do the digging and crunch the numbers and keep data on a spreadsheet so you can track it and that sort of thing, which I've done, then you realise just the enormity of the economic changes that have happened in the West, and the totally different economic structure we have. We've descended into a complete crony economy, and the entire media landscape is pretending like they don't know. You've been a Tasselist today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.